It's been about 3 months since I left my old job and started my new life as a full-time landscape photographer. And I think I've adjusted to my new lifestyle quite well. So what I thought I'd do this week is share with you exactly what goes on behind the scenes so you can see exactly how I'm spending my time. Obviously, since going full-time, I have a lot more time for my photography. I actually like to try and get out every morning if at all possible, and I do that for 3 reasons. Firstly, I want to get out and practice so that I can improve the standard of my photography. Secondly, I like to explore the Lake District as much as possible to grow my location knowledge. And finally, I want to grow my portfolio and my following on social media. Now, obviously, social media is important. It's where I market myself as a photographer, and at the moment where all of my business is coming from. Now, as well as YouTube, I'm also on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and I have to constantly go out with my camera to get new images that I can post across those different platforms. In order to grow on social media, you've just got to keep feeding the machine. So that's why I've come to Derwentwater this morning, to practice my photography and to get a shot that I can post on social media. And I've actually been quite lucky this morning. I arrived about an hour ago and I spent some time looking for a composition, but I struggled to find something. And then I stumbled across this little beauty. This is a very, very simple shot. We've got cat bales and the reflections in the distance, and then in the foreground, as a bit of foreground interest, we've got this frosty log. Now, generally when I come out, I'm looking for 2 scenes that I'm going to photograph. The first one is kind of the main scene, the main point of coming here. So for Derwentwater, that's the view across towards Cat Bells. And I try and get 2 shots for that. I try and get a landscape orientation shot that will be shared on Facebook and will go into my video. And I try and get a portrait orientation version that will get posted to Instagram. And when I've done that, I go off in search of something else. And at the moment, what I'm trying to do is trying to find more intimate shots, and those will get posted up to Twitter. For my second shot this morning, I want to go for a more intimate shot of this little cottage that sits on the edge of Derwentwater. What attracts me to this scene is the cottage itself. It's white, it's a very clear subject, a very clear focal point. I also like all of the colour. There are patches of orange surrounding the cottage. And both the white of the cottage and the orange of the trees are reflecting nicely on the surface of the lake. So with what looks like 2 half-decent images, that's been a fairly productive morning for me, but it's now time for me to pack up my gear and head home. Right. As you can see, I am now back in my office. This is my favourite place in the world. I love spending time in here. It's about midday. I usually try and get back home after a shoot by at least noon, so that I can spend all afternoon doing the really important stuff. So I've got a few jobs to do, but first and foremost, today is a Tuesday and I have my videos going out at 6 o'clock GMT or UK time on a Tuesday. And so my first job for today is getting tonight's video all set up and ready to go. Tonight's video is the film that I shot while I was away in the Chiltern last week. Now, I've already edited the video. I did that while I was away. And I've also uploaded it. So the only thing that I've got left to do is the SEO, the search engine optimization for the video. So that involves giving it a title, writing a description, setting the tags, creating an end screen, doing the pop-up cards, and also creating a thumbnail. Now, generally, that little lot usually takes me about an hour to do. With tonight's video all ready to go, I can now turn my attention to today's work. Now that involves editing my photos from this morning and posting them to social media. Now I actually schedule my social media posts. I typically work 24 hours to 48 hours ahead of myself. So there's always a queue of social media posts ready to go out. Now today I need to get 3 social media posts done. I need a post for Facebook, a post for Instagram, and a post for Twitter. And so that's what I'm going to focus on doing next. One of the things that I've noticed since going full time is for some reason it takes me longer to edit my photos and schedule my social media posts. Now this isn't something new, this is something that I've always done. Admittedly, I do a bit more of it now, but it takes a lot longer than I'd anticipated, and I think this is a big part of why I seem to have less time than I thought I would. So with my Facebook, Instagram and Twitter posts all sorted for today, the next thing I like to do is then crack on with editing the video. Now typically my weekly videos are actually made up of multiple days, and it's essentially a set of mini vlogs pushed together to create one bigger video. And what I like to do is I like to try and edit those as I go, so I have a feel for how the story is evolving. So that's what I'm going to do next. Now, I'm looking at somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes footage per day, and that takes me, again, somewhere around an hour to put together. Another thing that I do on a daily basis is I write a blog post. Now, the blog post gets published every week. It goes out on a Monday morning about 8 o'clock. But what it essentially is a diary of my previous week, and this is part of my effort to document the process that I'm going through. So each day I try to write a small diary entry, and the other thing that I do is I try to put a little bit of self-critique on each of my images, and generally this helps me to understand if my photography is improving and the areas that I need to work on. But I think it also helps the people that read my blog to understand where perhaps the issues are with my photography, and hopefully they can pick up a few ideas about areas in which they can improve their own. So that's a pretty typical day for me at the moment. I'm out shooting first thing in the morning. I like to get back to my office for about midday, and then I spend the afternoon editing my photos, scheduling my social media posts, editing my video and writing my blog. And it's about 5 o'clock now, and I'm going to stop work, have a bit of dinner and spend a bit of time with my wife. But because today's a Tuesday, I will be back online later to see how the video's going. If yesterday is a typical day for me, I'm out practicing my photography and promoting myself on social media, then how do I make money? What on earth am I promoting? Now that is a very good question. So far the majority of my income has come from running one-to-ones. That's when another photographer hires me for my expertise. Now you might be thinking, why would anybody want to hire you? Well, there are 3 main reasons. The first reason is for beginners who might want a little bit of help with things like camera settings or basic composition advice. Then on the other hand, we also have more experienced photographers who are looking for location guiding and advice on locations here in the Lake District. And then finally, you've also got people who want a bit of company while they're out and about, another photographer to chat to while they're out shooting. Now you may remember a couple of weeks ago I was with another photographer called Sander. And he was an experienced photographer and he was looking for some location advice. In fact, what he wanted was a specific location so he could get a specific shot. And next week I'm being joined by a chap called David, and he wants something almost exactly the same, but this time it's not Loughrig Fell he's interested in, it's Low Fell. And that's why today I'm here at Loweswater. David wants to get that classic shot of Crummock Water from the summit of Low Fell, and it's my job to get him up there as quickly and as safely as possible. So this morning I headed up there to scout out the best possible routes. Now, because I live on the eastern edge of the Lake District, I don't get over here to the west very often. In fact, I've only ever climbed Low Fell once. Now, the route that I took was the route that starts off at the Maggage Bridge car park here at Loweswater. Now, unfortunately, I found that the path was in very, very poor condition. It was very difficult to get a foothold at times, and we're going to be climbing in the dark carrying heavy packs, and so I had to go and find a much better route. Fortunately, I descended via the route that goes to Thackthwaite, and that was much, much better. Now that I've finished scouting Low Fell, I thought I might as well come along here to Loweswater and see if I can't get a shot, as I'm here anyway. But conditions, as you can see, are a bit poor. But this is another thing that I need to practice. When people are working on one-to-ones, they don't always get the best conditions, and so it can be really helpful if I can make some suggestions about different types of composition or different approaches to photography that help people get results when conditions are, let's say, suboptimal. Now, I am on record as saying that there's no such thing as bad light, only the wrong subject, so I might be about to make a bit of a tit of myself. In order to reduce the chances of that happening, we're going to crack out our old friend, the Moody black and white long exposure. When I bring people out on one-to-ones, I like to have a few different ideas for different shots that we can get, different locations, and here at Loweswater we have the Holmforce waterfall. So if next week, if conditions are like this, grey, overcast, not very inspiring, it's perfect for waterfall photography, so we can nip up here and get this shot. It's not going to be enough for me just to have a few locations in mind. I also need to be able to spot potential compositions as we go along. Now, should David get bored of doing moody black and white long exposures and photographing waterfalls, there's also this beautiful woodland here at Loweswater for us to explore. Let's hope next week that some of this autumn colour is still here. It was genuinely not my intention to turn this week's video into an advert for my one-to-ones, but as I'm going to get berated in the comments section anyway, I might as well get my money's worth. So, if you want to come to the Lake District and hire me for a one-to-one, the details are on my website. There's a link in the description below.